Let me kick off today by telling you a short story. So it all starts when I was in middle school. I got my test back and looked down and see, 86%. What do you guys think of 86%? Yeah, it's not bad, right? It's an A grade. I should feel so proud of myself for burning midnight oil and finally aced the test. Intuitively, I looked beside me and heard that one friend. You know how there's always that one kind of person in any class that says, I got 96%. That was so close to 100. I wish I'd tried harder and done better. Seriously? A brief flick of joy that barely surviving for a minute just vanished. My 86% felt like a shame. Then my mind whispered, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. And maybe I will never be. At this stage of the story, most of us here will come to the same conclusion, which is that comparison is bad. Don't compare yourself to others. Such a protective response that has been propagated for years, especially through social media. That if you search up COMPARISON, there'll be hundreds of videos criticizing it. But growing up a little bit more, I sort of wonder, what if comparison isn't the problem? Do you know that the saying, don't compare yourself to others, is scientifically unrealistic? This is because humans are naturally wired to compare. According to psychologist Leon Festinger in the social comparison theory, in life, many things don't have objective measurements. In order to evaluate, am I good at this? Am I improving? Where do I stand among the crowd? Our brain uses people as reference points. It then calculates the relative status by detecting differences and then processing any feelings correspondingly. Comparison acts as information, and humans improve by observing others, understanding self-capabilities, and setting expectations for the future. So you see, comparison isn't the problem. It is how we interpret it. When comparison stops being a tool for growth, what can I do better, and starts becoming a definition of who I am, this is where comparison becomes invalidate and toxic. Explain perfectly for the reason why did I obtain such negative reaction in the story that psychologist Claudia Steele has explained in the self-affirmation theory. People strive to protect what researchers call self-integrity by activating psychological defense to unwanted information. Where comparison challenges the belief of how we see ourselves, the belief that we're capable, we're competent, we're worthy of. Our mind does not interpret comparison fairly anymore, but shift to what's so-called self-protection mechanism. When our mind's prioritizing to protect self-worth instead of evaluating comparison fairly, protective response would be automatically and largely unconscious. So tell me if you have never heard of these common responses, such as denials like, grades don't matter, money isn't important, or de-evaluations like, they're just lucky, I was innately born like this, blame who? Well, all of these mechanisms protect self-esteem, I agree, but they can also stop us from learning. And here's why. So far, we have just clarified the literal meaning of comparison, what it is, and some small scientific facts behind the tendency of avoidance, which draws me back to the core idea of my speech today, which is comparison isn't harmful unless it is allowed to define identity instead of guide growth. Taking myself an example, I was originally born and grew up in lovely Vietnam before I transferred to beautiful Canada. For the life experience I have in mixed cultures, trust me when I tell you that comparison is such a misjudged villain because I've had it as struggle, as burden, but also as a weapon, as self-essence. And today also marked exactly 2 years since my last longest fight. For a long time in the past, comparison felt heavy to me. In several competitive Asian communities, every difference seems to carry a quiet message. Someone is smarter. Someone is more achievable. Someone is already ahead. Everybody seems to be constantly moving, and once in a while, the feeling of being left behind gradually shapes how I view my identity. I remember scrolling through a scoreboard not to understand my capabilities, but to locate my rankings, my standing among the peers, and especially my parents' pride. And I hate it so much. So do typical Asian kids. But something changed when my environment shifted. When I moved to Canada, the atmosphere was calmer. The pressure was no longer there. No call-out names, no public scores. Even scoreboards are anonymized by using student ID. What a thing for me. But here's the thing. How did I feel? Strangely unexpected. I felt empty, like something was missing. Without constant navigation based on any visible skills or measurements that I had grown used to, the sense of directions also became vague. And so for the first time ever in my life that I realized comparison had played a more complicated role. It creates pressure, yes, undeniable, but it also urges visible progress. Comparison that looks different to me. And yet, the root I carry with slowly returned to me, a quiet flame of competitiveness. Not the one that tears others down, but the one that pushes me forward and sparks me curiosity to approach to people I admire and actually learn from them. Instead of seeing my achievements as a limit, I started seeing others as a possibility of improvement. Therefore, comparison does not disappear. What changed was how I choose to use it. Today, we have audience varying in age. There are kids, teenagers, young people. Learning from someone better might feel natural, just like me. So if I were asked what would I do differently in the story, I would still compare. But take one more step. Ask questions. At least one. Ask how. How did you learn for the test? How did you solve for these questions? How did you improve your productivity? Comparison is literally information, but it can also figuratively is a clear direction. And that's what lifts me to become that 96% students, of course, not with that exaggerated reaction. What about parents, teachers, adults, older people? I know. The reality is tough. Reputation, experience, self-ego can all make comparison feel so uncomfortable. And admitting that someone is better might feel like a lot of status. But please remember, growth requires one thing, the willingness to learn. So hear me out. The solution is actually easier and friendlier than you think. The next time you encounter someone, even they're an expert in an area, resist your instinct to defend your position. Do not concern about who's better, who's worse. Shift your attention toward what can be learned from differences. Start your conversation. Share your stories. And I know you all here master in small talks, so opening a conversation should just be like a piece of cake. So you see, comparison does not disappear. It always exists in our life. I see it as an abstract concept that each of us perceive it in our own way. So why don't we just choose to look at it from a reframed perspective? Not a judgment of identity, but as a catalyst for growth. Together, let's transform comparison from something that confines us to something that propels us forward. And once again, my name is Lê Trần Thái An, or you can call me Anna Lê, and that is how I've learned from comparison. What about you? Have you changed your mind yet? Thank you for listening.